Hey, welcome to the Intentional Life Podcast. We're just three guys, husbands, dads, business owners, and we're trying to live our lives on purpose. We know how easy it is to drift, and this show is about getting back in the driver's seat, leading with clarity in your faith, your family, fitness, finances, and more. Now, we don't have it all figured out, but we're doing the work, and we're inviting you to do it with us. Let's dive in.
The only guarantee of failure is to stop trying. This is a quote from John Maxwell. I don't know if you've read many books from John Maxwell, Keith, but I always appreciate his little pithy statements that kind of capture what it looks like to lead well. Have you read many of John Maxwell's books?
Read one book when I was in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think for me, I don't know how many books he's put out. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Some of it can be obviously repetitive, like kind of rehashing in different ways what it looks like to lead well. But I am amazed at how well he puts out information. And I love this quote because I feel like it really summarizes what we are going to try to accomplish today, what we're going to try to communicate by way of understanding the emotional journey or the emotional cycle that people go on to pursue change of any kind. So like if you're a person pursuing building out a new vision or a new dream like an entrepreneur, there is a emotional cycle that takes place. Or if you're a person that says, I want to get my health in line, I want to get in better shape, the same cycle takes place for that, or really any endeavor that you pursue. The greater level that you understand this process, when you get to each one of these phases, you're able to manage it better. It's like you're able to set better expectations. So I'm really excited. Keith, you shared this cycle with me, and I'm excited about jumping in. Do you want to kind of introduce us? I don't know if you want to give us a quick overview of the 5 points, and then we can break them apart or how you want to do that. But introduce us to this cycle.
Yeah, sure. The first phase is uninformed optimism. This is the typical honeymoon phase of any change we make in our life. It feels great. First get married, maybe you change your job. You think this is going to be amazing, honeymoon stage. The second phase is informed pessimism, where reality sets in. Things feel a little harder than expected, and motivation starts to fade during this phase. The third phase is valley of despair, and most people don't get past the third phase. And the valley of despair is where all those dreams die that you had in the uninformed optimism phase. Or the other option is they're reborn through discipline and working through that phase. And then you go to phase 4, which is informed optimism. You've got momentum, but you know what the difficult things are, and you're feeling good about the difficulty and your ability to be successful. And so you're growing. And then you have stage 5, which is finally success and fulfillment. This becomes your new normal. And what once was hard for you has now become easier and has become your identity. So those are quick 5 stages of the emotional journey we go through when we're looking at doing any change in our life.
So I think this probably resonates with most people. I really love the first stage, this uninformed optimism. You don't know what you don't know. You're
Right.
setting out. You are just pumped. Motivation is at its height. You have a very clear vision of why you're doing what you're doing, and you're setting out for this new ambition. Now, give us a couple of tips on how you can actually set yourself up during this uninformed optimism, how you could set yourself up, I think, for future steps. Because I think everybody probably knows as you went through that, they're like, oh, that's pretty intuitive. Like, I think I've experienced that several times in my life to different levels, like whatever you're setting out to do. So how do we actually set up the future in such a way that doesn't flatten the motivation or optimism? Like, in other words, we don't stay like pessimistic, like, yeah, it's just going to suck. Life's horrible. How do we manage and actually use maybe some of that motivation, but also realize, yeah, the motivation is probably going to die out. I am going to get to despair mode, and I need to develop the mental toughness to be able to withstand where most people quit. I want to continue. So how do we set ourselves up for that success?
Well, if you're looking for a visual on this, the visual on the 5 steps for me is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So if you go search that on Google, bring up a visual of that for yourself, you'll see you have an axis of confidence, and then you have a skill at the very bottom. And if you think of anything that you're doing The reason why you're an uninformed optimism is because you think you're better than you really are. Because you don't know all the things. Don't know what you don't know. So a phrase you'll often hear people say, or maybe an attitude you feel on the inside would be, I know what I need to know. I don't need your advice.
Mm.
And that is proof. If you're saying that to yourself, that's proof that you're probably at the worst stage of your skill and capability in whatever you're doing. So be mindful of that's kind of a gut reaction that we have. And then you can do the opposite. Instead of saying, I know everything, you can say, I don't. And the fact that I'm even thinking or feeling a rejection towards somebody giving me input, that could be knowledge, information, or investing in myself. Maybe somebody's saying, go to this peer group, go do this online course, but you're feeling resistance towards doing that thing. Maybe you're at the first stage of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You think you know a lot, but you really don't. So the
Mm.
opposite thing you can do is chase the opposite of what your gut feels in thinking, I don't need this. Yes, you do. You don't. Maybe I know everything is what your gut's saying. No, I don't. And I need advice right now. Something
Well,
along that
what would
lines.
you say? I think this is a Nelson Mandela quote. It's something along the lines of like, it always seems impossible until it's done. Or to use a more modern quote, people are like, when you set out to do something, you're starting out to do something, people are kind of like, yeah, it's kind of dumb. Why don't you get a real job? Or why don't you just find out what's already working? And then once you have a breakthrough that might be novel, people are like, oh, how did you do it? And now all of a sudden you're on the other end of like, you're a genius. It's
Yeah,
groundbreaking. And really the test of whether you're an idiot or a genius was whether or not you were able to stick it through to be successful
that's
in
right.
that
Yeah.
particular thing. But I'm curious of your thoughts here, because I think sometimes a visionary, somebody who's setting out to do something new, the reason why they struggle with getting advice is feeling like you're going to try to push me into the pattern that people already have been doing. I'm trying to
Mm.
disrupt that. I have a different vision, and I'm afraid someone's going to take my vision and try to force it into a pre-existing model that I'm trying to interrupt. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to somebody like that? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. They're like, I have something that I want to bring that, yes, has some similarities, but it's actually quite different. And if I share this with other people, they're maybe afraid, one, somebody might steal their idea. That's a thing. But then
Yeah.
also that somebody might try to say, oh, that's not going to work. This is what works. Just go with what works. And somebody's trying to push them in their direction. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah. The thoughts would be that you need to get as much input as you can. And
Yeah,
instead
instead of
of,
being afraid of the input,
yeah,
like get as much as you can.
yes. Yeah, get as much input as you can. If you're just starting off with something and you feel that maybe I shouldn't share this, maybe I shouldn't connect with other people, I don't want feedback from other people because it might be negative. Maybe it'll douse my dreams and make me not feel so motivated about doing it. Well, you're still thinking about that thing in an immature way. And to think about it in a mature way, I'll share my screen here so we can see this again, or I guess for the first time here. This is what I've been looking at. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's those 5 stages. But you're sitting right here, but somehow you need to get to here. But you need to go through the valley to be able to get there. And the valley is the third phase. That's
Mhm.
uninformed optimism here, informed pessimism. Oh, there's going to be a lot of disasters. And then the valley of despair here. Look, the opportunity is that 8 out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 people don't get past stage 3. If you just get to stage 4, you're unique. Doesn't matter what you choose. And it doesn't matter who you talk to or the input that you get. Most of the people that you're interacting with probably struggle to get past stage 3. That's the statistic. So the goal is to get to stage 5, but you need to level up your network. You're the average of the 5 people you hang around, so you need to find the people that are going to pull you out of the valley and into maybe this is something that I could do, some confidence there, and ultimately it actually feeling easy. It's kind of, when we think about this axis, it reminds me of a professional athlete. I like to think about Tiger Woods in this case because I enjoy golf. So Tiger Woods, when he goes to hit the golf ball, does he think about, oh, I got to put my wrist here? And the classic is, got to put your head down, keep your eye on the ball when you hit it. The most classic golf advice ever, which isn't always correct, by the way. But Tiger doesn't think about those things. He thinks about the target and the goal. So one other thing you could put up here is, if there was a line at the very top, you could say mechanics focused, because that's all the person can think about, mechanics, because they don't know what to do. They're not good at what they do, and they learn as they're going through this phase that they need to do a lot of thinking about mechanics, and they can't think about the most important thing, which is the target and the goal. So they're not goal oriented. They're not target focused. So you can get stuck in this phase and thinking that mechanics are the way to success. But if you go all the way over to the right, the most successful golfers, the most professional athletes in the world, they don't think about mechanics. They practice mechanics, but when they perform, they think about the goal and the target, and then they just swing. They don't think about keeping their head down. They don't think about their foot and where that's at, or their wrist, or whatever. They're fully focused on the goal. So that's where you can perform at your best. When you've practiced those mechanics and you've committed to those mechanics so much in your life, and the practice that you really need to do, that you become a true expert, where you don't have to think about every single little mechanic that you do, and you can entirely think about the goal and focus on that.
Yeah, that's
What do
so
you think
good.
about that, John?
So I had a friend I was interviewing actually on the Mind and Body podcast. He just said, I'm not going to get the quote exact right, but he said, there are no black belt moves. There's only black belt skill levels. So in other words, they practiced those movements so much that they have a higher level of skill in each of those moves, but they're still fundamental moves. And I thought that was really interesting. And his point is you really are growing at your skill with the fundamentals. And I think about what you're saying here. It's that whole second nature idea. You've practiced this over and over and over again to where you no longer have to think about it. It's so habitual. It's just your reaction. And the people who are very good at martial arts, you come at them and they're doing a move. They're not like, oh, I should try this move. It's just a reaction. They know that when somebody comes at me this way, it's like a reflex that occurs. And I'm sure that's what a golfer would experience. They're like, I've done this over and over again. Now I'm focused on the, as you said, the target, the goal in mind. And so to not have the mechanics practice at all and to focus on the goal, you would probably just be really sloppy. You'd miss your hit. You'd be really sloppy. So it's kind of like, yes, you need time to just practice, but you really want to get to this place where you've practiced enough to where it becomes a kind of a second nature. I was reading a book. This is really interesting, actually. Have you read the book Talk Like Ted? It's based off of TED Talks. It's a phenomenal book on public speaking. It's actually one of my favorite books I think I've read on public speaking. It's phenomenal. But a lot of good illustrations on what resonates, what like persuades people, the psychology of public speaking. It's excellent. But one thing that he says is some people say, I don't want to practice my speech a lot. If I practice a lot, I feel artificial. I don't feel authentic. I want people to get my authentic self. And he says that the authenticity that you want is not on the shallow end of practice, but it's on the far end of practice where you practice this hundreds or thousands of times, where you're no longer thinking about your speech. You're thinking about the people to whom you're communicating to. If you haven't practiced, you don't know the speech very well. You're focused on your gestures. You're focused on where you're standing on the stage. You're focusing on how you're going to communicate this phrase with emotion. You're focused on all these points. It's the mechanics you're talking about.
That's right.
That you're not actually thinking about the people that you're trying to communicate it to. And that's where it feels authentic and powerful. That's where you want to get to. So hopefully some of these illustrations kind of enlarge on that concept. I think that's really good. And I think starting off, like you said, to your point, talking to people that have that mastery and have experienced each one of these points, and even more powerfully in the niche that you're trying to, whether it's a skill, whether it's a business you're trying to start or whatever, a person who, like, for instance, somebody that is trying to develop public speaking, maybe they've gone through hundreds of speeches that suck. And so they could tell you what it's like to be in that place of despair and how to have that informed optimism and then even reach that high level of success. For me as a coach with training people in fitness, not only do I have my own fitness journey that I've gone through, but I've been able to take people through, man, they're very optimistic when they start,
Yep.
informed
You see that.
pessimism, valley of despair. And unfortunately, I've had clients that unfortunately kind of quit when they hit the valley of despair. Like there's,
Yep.
you know, and I'm really trying to say, hey, just stick with these metrics or these fundamentals. We're going to keep tightening things up. We're going to have the breakthrough, but for some people,
Yeah.
they can't make it through.
Some
Fortunately,
people. I would never do that, John, but some
no,
people.
Keith, are you feeling convicted, brother?
No,
No, I'm just
I'm feeling convicted right now, man.
dude,
Are you
like,
sure this ain't your hot take on me right now? No,
so
just
for everyone that's listening in, for you though, you did not quit because I don't really look at you as actually quitting as much as like you needed to pivot because you have multiple businesses, families. You got
I
some you got acquisition, you got
yeah.
real estate deals you're dealing with. So you needed to take a pivot. For those listening in, Keith was an active client of mine for some time and had to make
Yeah.
some changes here was it the beginning of this year? Really? I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
you made some
Yeah.
changes. So no shade casting over here, Keith. I'm not casting no shade, but
Well,
uh
I would
go ahead.
say we should always be working out and find a way, but I definitely went through the valley for about 6 months right there, and I've come back. I'm working
I
out
feel like
every
you're at
day,
the I
right?
think you're probably at the
But
informed optimism stage though now.
maybe so, because I've definitely and I think it it's not that you go through it once and then that's it. It's more of a up and down because and then if you were to look probably at a stock graph, it's those ups and downs of the Dunning-Kruger effect and those phases, but you're leveling up because you're gaining more and more information all the time. Remember in our last podcast, you talked about how when you're physically working out, you're creating a physical, not knowledge, but you're developing, you're growing in your like physically instead of mentally. You were saying physically, so it's something your gut and your body remembers. You're referencing that, and that really
Well,
stuck
the
out to me
knowledge
in a
point,
good way.
this may not be the point you're talking about,
Yeah.
but the you have propositional knowledge, which is like facts, for your head.
Mhm.
Then you have the participatory knowledge. This is when you're
Yes, that's what it was.
experiencing that knowledge. So now the confidence in the facts is
Yes.
fortified because you're like, oh, I don't just know this on a propositional level. I know this because I participated with it. I've
Yes.
experienced it. So the
That
experiential knowledge.
exactly. I thought that was so good because we can have head knowledge, but until we wisdom is application. So applying that knowledge, participating and feeling that from your gut makes it truth. It doesn't make it truth when you just have it in your head. You have to participate. And probably to the point you were making about practice, where you practice so much that you can entirely think about the audience that you're trying to talk to. Or you can go on the golf course and just think about, I'm going to put that little ball in the hole, and that's all I'm focused on. I don't care if it's a trap shot. I don't care if it's a iron or a pitch shot. I'm just focused on the goal. I think that applies to everything in our life. I was talking to my son, John, and I'm curious what you think about this. I was trying to put some boundaries on how much time does it take to become a pro at something. All right. So I was trying to break it down because practicing music, doing sports, growing up, I put time into this stuff, and I was trying to think back on some basics. If you want to become better than the average person, practice for 30 minutes every single day. If you do that, you'll probably become better than, maybe you could say, high school level, better than high school level. Um, in whatever craft you're doing. If you want to become performance at maybe a high school level, so you're better than average if you practice for 30 minutes. If you want to be, say, going to state, winning state, all those different maybe competitions, really competitive, maybe you practice for an hour a day. Okay. So then if you want to go to college, at a college that's really good at the sport or the thing you're trying to do, and you want to be competitive at college and be in the top, let's say, 10, you need to practice for 4 hours a a day. If you want to become the greatest in the world at anything, you need to have 8 hours of focus practice a day.
Mm.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
I like what you're saying. If I would give any pushback on it, maybe not pushback. It's more just nuance, actually. So you're talking about the amount of time devoted to a practice.
Yes.
But I think how you can improve on this metric is actually think about, okay, there are people who they clock in the hours, but there are definitely people that manage that practice much better. So in other words,
That's a
you
good
might have
point.
two people
Yeah.
that put in 10,000 hours at a skill, and one comes out a pro and the other still seems kind of mediocre. Now, some of that I think might be natural skill. Somebody just has a natural ability or proclivity towards picking something up faster. So like, for instance, I think um, my wife Bethany, I studied music, but she just has a more natural gift. I took more voice lessons, like when it comes to like
Agreed on
voice
that one, John. Just kidding.
that she's better. Is what you said?
Yeah. Agreed on that.
Yeah. Oh man, dude, have you heard her sing?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
you have? Okay. Oh, yeah. Actually, that's another fun story. That I remember the first time I heard her sing, I was just, man, I was in love. I was just like, I don't know if you would really call it like actual love, but I was like infatuated, whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, she
Yeah.
can really sing. Goodness
Yeah.
gracious.
You married her for her voice. How dare you? I knew it.
But she, I remember like her, like she's a soprano and she can sing some pretty high notes with a lot of ease.
Yeah.
Her dad has a tremendous vocal instrument too, so she probably inherited that genetics. I would ask her like, how do you do that? I would even use words like, how do you go through the passaggio? You know, the whole transitioning
Yeah.
from like chest register to the head voice like register. And she's like, I don't know. I just
Hmm.
open up and I sing. And like, that's
Yep.
not helpful at all. But
Yep.
she's just really good at it. There is that. I think some people have just natural raw
Natural.
talent more than others
For sure.
for if you're thinking about like an instrument or a musician. I'm sure that's true with like people with numbers, like people that gravitate towards like mathematics. They might have a mind for it as opposed to so
Yeah.
two people could practice equal amount of time. But I think there's something about the deliberate practice, like
Yes.
targeted improvement, like breaking down the skill into sub skills and learning to how to get immediate feedback, and probably combining the time with someone who is the pro and somebody looking at, here's what you're doing, here's how you can make improvements, so you have a pro informing the one who's trying to become the pro. So man, I'm thinking just those nuances would improve what it would look like to become a pro. But it would
Yeah.
go beyond like the amount of time. It's now we're looking at the quality of time invested. Does that make sense? So I
Yeah.
think you're onto something.
It does.
I would just kind
Yeah.
of dig deeper into the nuance of how can
Yeah.
we heighten that, and then we would have to kind of go from there and say, what are proven ways to develop the skill itself and not just the amount of time. Here's the thing though, I think there's probably some mediocre people in the sense of like their natural talent that end up becoming better because they
Yep.
just put in the time. Whereas the other people,
And they practice
they
well.
were fast. Maybe even they had targeted, like it was quality sessions, but they just didn't put in the time. You know, they were
That's
distracted
exactly
by
right.
other things. And somebody just said, I'm going to be the person. I'm not the most skilled. I'm not the most talented, but I can do the thing. I don't even know if I'm doing it completely right or the right actions, but I'm going to do the thing. And I think in the end, that person is most of the time is going to win because they have what it takes to have the mental fortitude to put in that crazy amount of time towards the skill.
Right.
I
Yeah.
was reading an article by James Clear that basically said, what's the key ingredient for success? And he's like, some people, for a while, people pointed to education. So it's like, we need to educate society more because that'll enhance the chances of success. And yeah, that did help for sure, just being more educated. But there were really smart people that weren't successful, and there were people who were very uneducated that were. So like, okay, what's with this? How do we explain it? And so they said it's not education, it's not talent necessarily. What is it? And he came down a bunch of scientific studies that basically said that mental toughness, or you could say grit, is what was the key ingredient.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about this metric that we just went through, people hit that valley of despair and it's just sheer grit at that moment. Like, am I
Yeah.
going to continue to persevere with my passion or not? And it just takes some grit to push through. I wonder though, in this
Mm.
um, uninformed optimism stage, how can we set ourselves up? I think you said, man, talk to as many people as you can. I think that's going to begin what that will do. I think it'll actually begin the informed process
Right.
before you actually hit challenges. So you haven't hit the challenges yet, but now
Yeah.
you're being informed about them um, on an experiential level, not your own experience, but the experience of others. And I think this comes down to being able to write down, one, why are you doing this? Like, write that down really clear, because when you write down your why, you're going to come back to that why. I guarantee it. In the valley of despair, that why is going to have a tremendous amount of pressure. And unless you have fortified that why, it'll be crushed under the load of despair. So
Yeah.
you better know that and you write it down, because you're going to come back to it. But I think further than just writing down your why is actually writing out potential challenges that you will face. To use the words of Jesus, Jesus says when it comes to discipleship, he says, count the cost. Who's going to set out to build a
Yep.
tower and not actually consider the cost of that tower? To put it in very modern vernacular, it's stupid to set out to build a tower if you haven't considered the cost. And I think
Do
sitting out and
not.
saying, what are the potential challenges of this endeavor, whatever it is, and write those out. What that's doing, so you're talking to people, you're writing out potential challenges. It's actually setting an expectation that's not blind optimism. You still have optimism. You're still motivated, but now it's tempered by, okay, this is going to occur. So when those things occur, the challenge comes up, what do you think is going to come to your mind? We anticipated those challenges. And also, I talked to my mentor. He said this was going to happen. Now I'm ready. If it hits me blindly though, I'm like, this is going to be great, man. We're going to be at like millions of dollars in 6 months. This is just going to explode.
Yeah.
I just think that is helpful. What's your thoughts there? Anything you would add?
Yeah. Just thinking about how, as you were talking, I was thinking about the time I was struggling with a skill. It was the skill of singing, actually, in voice. We were both in the vocal department at school. And I talked to a mentor of mine, and he said, how many hours are you practicing? And I told him, thinking this was a lot, an hour a day. And he said, no, you put in 2 hours every single day. Every single day? Yep. Sunday too. Because I wasn't doing weekends, I don't think, at the time. And
Yep.
so after church, come home, put in another 2 hours. And he said, when you put in 2 hours, you will see an impact. And I did it and saw a drastic improvement. But the improvement wasn't just a physical singing more. It was, I was studying more, because that's a part of practice, studying more, learning more about the voice. I was doing more reps when I would sing songs. And so that way it's mapped out in my head. So I'm using my true voice now because it's mapped out and memorized in my head. You have to memorize music to be able to sing your true voice. And that impacted me in such a big way across every area of life, that a lot of times you can't even do your true action because who you truly are in the thing hasn't been practiced enough. And when you memorize it and you develop that in your life, you'll get to this place where we call it in the zone, where everything is just clicking. Boom, boom. Almost you don't even have to think about it. You just think about where you want to go and boom, you're doing it. And that's in the zone. In golf, the way that I experienced in the zone was I had practiced enough, I competed, and when I competed in the tournament, there were times where I felt like I was willing the ball where I wanted it to go. So I
Mm.
want to hit it over here. Boom, my body does it. If I wanted to putt the ball in the hole on the green, I went through my process, my routine, and I would see the line literally on the green, like this green line on the exact line I wanted the ball to follow. And then I would just putt back and forth. And I remember one round I had 11 putts on 9 holes. So I almost one putted every single green. And that is that zone you can get into, and it feels magical, but it's a product of math of you learning through practice exactly what your body should be doing and then performing that because you've practiced enough. So if you're having a problem in your life, if you're feeling, man, this is hard, I'm not getting it. Just like my buddy told me, first ask yourself, how many hours am I practicing per day? And then double it. See what happens. You don't have to do it forever. Just double it and see what happens in a short amount of time.
Yes. Yes, that sounds
Yeah.
good. That sounds actually very like Hermosi too. Like you hear his story where he was putting out like a certain amount of pieces of information for his business, and the other guy was like, "Oh, I do like 5,000 pieces," and he was doing like 300 or something like that. And it
Right.
kind of was a light switch for him. Like
Some
he's like,
insane number.
yeah. So he's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
need to like triple my output here," and that really actually did the thing. It really helped him
Wow.
build that momentum. And I think too that this is another problem. We were talking about precision of your practice, but sometimes overthinking can occur. This is me. Oh my goodness. I can overthink on precision, and it's just like, man, I just need to do the thing. Um,
Execute.
and a friend of mine who's really good in the marketing, but also just like design space, just really precise with like typography and color palettes and all this kind of stuff. And I was agonizing over that stuff. And he told me, it's like, I think you're overthinking this stuff, man. Just pick up your phone, push record, and be consistent, and you'll get better over time. You'll get better with your graphics or the type and all this
Yep.
kind of stuff. And that was I needed that. I needed to get slapped in the face to say, what are you doing? So I do think that what you're hitting on is kind of that fundamental, like do the thing, practice, don't overthink. You will get better at figuring out what is the better things to um, place the emphasis on. My time. So when I'm practicing singing, I'm going to focus on these things. Like, for instance, like somebody who's playing the piano, they may not see the value of doing scales. Then later they realize, oh, this is actually very fundamental. Learning my scales and arpeggios are really important for me for a basis
Wax
of.
on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is helpful. So I want to hit a couple more things on this.
Yeah.
Valley of despair. I think once you start to get into the informed optimism, it starts to just make it's making sense for you. You've gone through the valley. Your optimism is now calculated better with good information, not just propositional knowing, but now participatory knowing. You've experienced it, to tie in what we talked about last time. You've experienced this now to where you're like, okay, hey, I'm optimistic. I figured out things. Now we're actually building some momentum. But when you're in that valley of despair, like, what do you do, Keith, to help you hang on? Like, I mean, I get it. Okay, revisit your why. Okay, that's helpful. But maybe there were some challenges that you didn't hear about from your mentors. There were some challenges that you didn't anticipate when you wrote them down initially. You're like, I didn't have a plan for this. There was not a playbook.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What's your
That's
thoughts
when you
here?
know you're really in the valley. You shouldn't expect the pain you're about to go through. There should be an element of that. It's
Yes.
tough, and that means you're in a good spot. So when you do this a few times and you start practicing the gratitude of the valley, that on the other side of the valley, it's good. There's two passages of scripture that stick out to me on this. David says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because you are with me." That's the forward momentum thing. So he is willingly going through it, recognizing the pain of it, but seeing that he's not afraid. He's not afraid of the pain because God is with him. And he looks forward to that relationship with God and all the benefits, all the joy from that. That's where real satisfaction comes from. We also see this in Hebrews when it says, "For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame." Those things are forward momentum looks. That's the mentality that we need to have when we're going through the valley. What is the thing? Because if you don't have a thing that's going to raise you up, your conscience will sabotage you. It's kind of a weird thing that happens in life. We rise to essentially the height of our goals in life and the vision that we have. If you don't have a worthy cause in your life that conscious wise you know is good, it's honorable, it's just, it's quality. If you don't have that, you won't do it. Flat out, you just won't do it. You won't change because you don't see where you need to go. So, yes, your original why, come back to the original why. Why am I doing this? But also meditating on that to a deeper degree and understanding the value of that why at that next level when you're in such pain as well, because you grow in that. When I
Mm.
was in 2017, I went through a dramatic change in my life where I felt like I was losing my business and losing myself and my identity as a leader, and I had to change. And at that time, my wife gave me this little plaque that said, "When you feel like quitting, remember why you started." Well,
Mm.
the
I like
place
that.
I'd gotten to in the business was a result of disastrous choices that I had made in not adjusting and changing into the man I knew I needed to be to help other people. And I got really focused on that. Every time am in that place in that valley, I know what's true, right, honorable, and just. It's whatever God thinks is right. That's what's good, right, just, and honorable. That's something outside of myself. It's a moral standard that my conscience can align to and gives me the why of why I need to submit to that plan and just do it. And I think of myself as a servant to that. And that realignment in the pain, it reminds me of David when he says, "I'll walk through this valley of shadow of death." I'm looking forward to that rod of correction because guess what? I am so much happier when I'm submitted to that plan. And that's exactly how I feel when I'm going through that valley. Boy, this is good. This hurts, but this is good, man, because I needed this. I didn't realize how far off I'd gotten. And it's a wonderful
Mm.
opportunity at that next level. And I think that's where that graph, going up and down, Dunning-Kruger effect, and you raise up to that next level comes into play. So
Yes. I
that's how it
think
feels for me.
so. I think this is a great plug for just the emphasis on faith here, because I think that Christianity has an advantage here because what we often say is like be connected to your why. If you're being connected to your why, that means you're grounded in your purpose. But apart from, and I know that this isn't just true of Christianity, but apart from something that transcends your purpose is going to be rooted in something that you've just created. You've created your own purpose. But
Yeah.
from a Christian perspective, purpose is both given. We discover our purpose. God's given. He's wired us a certain way, but then is also created. We're called to be. We're bearing the image of God, so we actually can go and we have liberty to create. So it's both.
Yeah.
So we have the anchor of God has given us a purpose, and He's also so hey, go create purpose, go create meaning, which is a beautiful thing. But even with both of those, we can anchor back to hey, when I feel like my purpose is further out, or I even feel crushed under the weight of despair, and maybe my purpose isn't going to be realized like I thought, in the end, I know God is going to accomplish His purpose through me, and that to me, that transcends whatever you go through. So you might actually be pretty despairing, but you're not going to actually reach a full level of despair if you have that faith, if you're anchored. And I think that's exactly what the writer of Hebrews is getting at when he says, we have an anchor for the soul. And Jesus is that anchor. I think that's a
Right.
beautiful thing. So I think that is a really, really good point. And even something to think about for those listening in, whether you're a Christian or non-Christian, how do you anchor yourself to purpose? And this is something to kind of think through.
Yeah.
I was reading this quote that was very provocative. It really caught my attention, by Dwight Eisenhower. It goes like this: plans are worthless, but planning is everything.
Mm.
It's a really interesting thing. I was like, what
It's true.
does he mean at all? And I began to actually research this quote and what was his original thought process. I kind of got a hunch of what he meant, but I went back and looked at what he was getting at. So basically, he's just saying, no matter what you write down at the beginning, it's going to change. Like the plans
Yep.
themselves are in a sense worthless because there's going to be a lot of changing that takes place. But the discipline of planning is everything,
Yeah.
because you're actually learning to think and develop mental toughness to see it through. Planning is worthless. Plans, excuse me, are worthless, but planning is everything. And I just love that quote. It's been something that kind of has stuck with me through when I'm going through the valley and I'm realizing like actually maybe some of the reason why I'm here is because my plans were very optimistic. They weren't very well informed. Now I have an opportunity to grow. And so I'm going to, be willing to change the plan, tweak the plan, whatever it is, so that I can begin to see good momentum and growth. And
Yeah.
so this is turning the problem into an opportunity for growth. But
It's good.
you got to look at your
Yep.
plans as not something that's sacred. That's like, no, this can never change. It's like, I'm going to loosely hold these plans, but my goal ultimately is to find success, not to be married to a certain perfect system at the initial go, which I'm sure you've experienced that through years and years of business
Oh
as a
man.
business owner.
So here's my advice. If you're going to do anything, make your plan 80%. So think about that on a grading curve. I think we all know what an F is, anything below that 60%. So think of achieving 80% on that plan, because you're going to have adjustments on that. Perfectionism is the enemy of success. If you try to be perfect in every single one of your plans, you're going to just get passed all day long by B students all day. That's why smart people don't make it, because they're all proud of their perfectionism, but they're just using it as an excuse to not move. If you're not moving, if you're not improving, then you're not a perfectionist, you're lazy. Sorry.
Yeah.
A little bit of a hot take right there, but you need to make your plan achieve about 80%, call it good, and then go do the thing. And guess what? As you're doing the thing, you're going to find opportunities for improvement, and then go improve it again. Keep on doing that over and over and over again, and you'll optimize to success.
I'm curious what you think about this. This rides off of what you just said, but it's in the context of children. You were talking about something that you're doing with your son. So I'm curious of your thoughts here. For my son Adrian, he's very smart. Like his vocabulary when he was like 1 was like incredible. I was like, goodness gracious. Like, and even today, I forget he's 10. I forget that I'm talking to a 10-year-old just because he's a brilliant kid. Definitely gets it from his mom. So, what was I going to say? But there was for years, we would like kind of celebrate his intelligence. You're so smart. You're intelligent. One thing that I was reading from it was a child psychologist that talks about the development of children. They said that you have to be careful about celebrating intelligence, because they will create this identity that says, I value being viewed intelligent rather than challenging myself on a deep way. So they will
Yeah.
do easy things to be viewed as intelligent rather than doing hard things that may make them look less efficient or less intelligent at that moment. So the psychologist basically said, instead of celebrating how intelligent they are, celebrate the effort they're putting in. So it was like, wow, you really worked hard at that. Wow, you really were disciplined. You put the time into that. And yes, the result of it might be showing some intelligence. You might celebrate that. I'm not saying you never celebrate intelligence at all, but now their metric for, hey, this is what it looks like to pursue the good or do something good is how hard can I work rather than how can I best showcase how smart I am. I'm only going to put myself in a situation where I look smart, sound smart. And now this kind of fosters the context as an adult to actually run away from hard things and run toward easy things just so that I feel good about myself, rather than growing up in a context where it says, I do the hard thing. Is this hard? This is looking possible? Bring it on, because that's what's been celebrated my whole life. That's built into the psychology of like raising them to be tough, boys, girls, men and women.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts there? That kind of plays into what you were saying.
So I love the bridges that you can cross between personal and professional when you're learning to parent children and also learning to be a leader in business, because basically your role as a leader is to look for the opportunity and the skills in the people that you're leading, and then give them tough things to do. Fabricate difficulty. If you're not doing that because you want people to like you, you're failing as a leader. And I'm going to raise my hand on that one. I struggle with that. I want people to like me. Well, that's the enemy of their development. And I need to fabricate difficulty in them. And fabricating difficulty is this, if we could think about what's the perfect line of that, it's where you're making it difficult for them, but at the same time, they feel super loved at the same time. That can't be faked. That has to be totally genuine. So you have to understand them. That's like a father parenting their children with understanding. And at the same time, a leader who understands their people. So they're spending in practice enough time to understand them, and then they're fabricating difficulty for them and loving them the way they want to be loved. You're going to develop people the fastest way they can be developed when you perfectly balance those, which is going to be different for every single child, and it's going to be different for every single employee that you have. That's not an easy task to do. That's why typical managers can manage directly about 5 to 7 people. That's it. So I guess I
Oh,
can't have
that's
any more kids.
interesting.
I have 7, so I can't do beyond. I just no. You get the kids to manage the other kids. That's the secret.
Oh, that's the secret. There it is.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I know we probably need to start wrapping this episode up. I think this has been a very fruitful conversation. I've enjoyed just kind of fleshing out some of these concepts even more in my own thinking. If I can kind of end with this, like, I'm sure there's people listening in. You might be in a different spot on this. I don't know if you want to call it continuum, but this grid or whatever. What's the name of the grid again? What's it called?
The Dunning-Kruger effect.
That's it. Okay, I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. You might be in a different place, but hopefully this gave you something as you're at each spot to kind of think through, and that might be helpful. There's this quote by Abraham Lincoln that I go back to, and I think it's attributed to him, is discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And I like this quote because right now, if you're in the valley of despair, what you want most is probably quitting. I'm sorry, what you want now. Let me reverse that. What you want now is probably quitting. But really, if you dig deep, what you want most is really success. You want to push through. And it's not just the thing, it's actually the discipline that it took to get to the thing, that feeling. So stick with it and hang in there, and realizing that, hey, mental toughness and grit is what is going to be necessary to get you. And really, if you think about it, anything that's worth doing is worth investing. If it's worth doing, it's worth investing all that energy into, all the sweat and tears and blood that's shed potentially. It's like, this is worth it. And so just kind of hang in there. But thank you guys so much for listening in, and just remember, whatever you do, be intentional.